Stay your blade from the flesh of the innocent, hide in plain sight, and never compromise the Brotherhood. These are the tenets of the Assassin's Creed. The primary goal of the Assassins is that of peace and the pursuit of it through the preservation of freedom. While we know that in Assassin's Creed Rogue we get to play as a member of the Knights Templar, the question that I wanted to answer was whether Shay Cormac ever deviates from the philosophical and moral convictions of the Creed. I also wanted to discuss the actions and moral proclivities of other characters in Rogue, namely Achilles Davenport and Haytham Kinway. I'm going to be talking about the events of Rogue as well as some of the other games and the characters that are featured in them, so of course a warning that spoilers are ahead. Assassin's Creed Rogue is an interesting and unique game because we play as a Templar. That was the main selling point. But before we begin on that, there's a point I wanted to bring up. In AC Rogue, you would think the writing would frame the characters and their respective factions as being more morally grey, given that Shay would have to be driven out. In effect, I'm not entirely sure that's what they were going for. Sadly, in Rogue, there's a deep mischaracterization of people where assassins are performing acts that are simply evil and Templars are at times doing good. Basically, they make it a lot more black and white than it should have been. Looking a little closer, however, you can start to understand how and why the characters do what they do, and you can see that it's more depth than what meets the eye. Now, let's get a bit of background. Assassin's Creed Rogue is a 2014 release that was later remastered in 2018. We follow the story and journey of Shay Patrick Cormac during the 7 Years' War from 1752 to 1760, and it's considered the closing chapter in the Kenway family saga. At the beginning of the game, Shay is an assassin, and he runs with the American Colonial Brotherhood led by Achilles Davenport during their prime. Or at least their prime until a certain someone decided to put the entirety of the Brotherhood onto his back.
Give me leave!
But this game isn't about him. Shay is Irish, as you could probably immediately tell.
Admit it, I nearly had you.
Nearly counts for nothing, Shay. And besides, no. That was just luck.
I make my own luck, Liam.
But he was born in New York where he lost his parents at a young age and is inducted into the Brotherhood by his childhood friend Liam O'Brien, where they are both mentored by Achilles. Now, there isn't much about what happens during this time, but while we're aware of the familial bond that Liam and Shay share, we can't fully grasp what Achilles and Shay mean to each other. That origin is kind of framed in a way that they could have a father-figure relationship, but it doesn't feel that way when they actually interact. If anything, Achilles is quite dismissive of Shay, and at times I get the impression that there's an unspoken disappointment from Achilles towards Shay. During the Halcyon Days saga, or the prologue, we get to see how the characters interact and are essentially introduced to those who would later become our targets. Rogue is a short game, so we don't get much development in many areas, but one area I really believe they should have focused on more was Shay's tentativeness about the Creed's actions and their demands of him. It would have made his eventual betrayal more meaningful, and we could see his development to eventually leaving the Creed itself. For example, if we saw that the memory corridors were written like they are in AC Rogue with Connor, where there's valid philosophical debate between the two parties, it would have made so much more sense. If he was starting to understand that they aren't just senseless killers, and maybe, just maybe, silently agreeing with them as well. But instead of that, we get shallow memory corridors that serve mainly just to drive the plot forward and bring us to the next artifact. There's even one where he kinda ignores the guy that he just killed.
It matters not. Some of the greatest scientific minds of all Europe could not make it work. Now all I need is the manuscript, and all shall be revealed.
In saying that though, there is one line of dialogue that I really loved, but was relegated to free roam ship dialogue.
I didn't realize there was a brotherhood in Haiti.
Yes. Francois McCandle is their mentor. He gathers many of his assassins from the Maroons.
Those are escaped slaves and their children, right?
They are. A shame, though. They escaped terrible conditions only to be killed in that earthquake.
But Haiti's a French colony now.
Aye, it is.
And here, the assassins are helping King Louis. But in Haiti, the French own the slaves who are set free by the assassins.
Our struggle is beyond political borders, Shay.
This is what I wanted to see. Shay is questioning the creed. We know that he has problems with authority, like him punching Chevalier, but now he's beginning to think for himself, and his decision making is centered around his moral compass.
What is the world, then? An illusion. One which we can either submit to, as most do, or transcend.
What is it to transcend?
To recognize nothing is true and everything is permitted. That laws arise not from divinity but reason. I understand now that our creed does not command us to be free. It commands us to be wise.
Altair once said himself that the creed commands us to be wise, so it's in instances like these that Shay is more like an assassin than the entirety of the Colonial Brotherhood, except for Adewale, I guess. In addition to this, you can see that Liam actually doesn't care about the good and the bad, and that deep down this is not about doing what's morally correct, it's just a job for him. And I'll speak a bit more on this later because I do believe it's what's related to Liam's downfall. I want to then bring attention to the day of the Lisbon earthquake. Shay is sent by Achilles to seek out a precursor site. At this point in the story, Shay has gradually begun to question the assassins' motives and disagrees with their refusal to engage in dialogue with the Templars. His attempt to retrieve the Piece of Eden in Lisbon then triggers an earthquake and destroys the city, with Shay only just barely making it out. Which, by the way, is an incredible set piece. I don't know why they don't do this as much anymore.
How could God do this to them? God had nothing to do with this.
Understandably, the immense weight of the guilt comes crashing down on Shay, and he's enraged. He comes back to the homestead and he confronts Achilles and the others, and the response that he's met with is really frustrating.
Great earthquake. Thousands dead thanks to your damned manuscript.
This cannot be.
Shay, a person cannot start an earthquake.
A person meddling with these precursor machines could. You saw the box, Hope. The temple was filled to bursting with that kind of power. You made me slaughter innocents.
How dare you?
You defend him? Achilles sent me in there like Macandal sent his man in Haiti.
What the hell's going on? Stop this! The operation was delicate. Perhaps
You are shifting the earth itself. Who are you to decide what city falls next?
Get him out of here.
Achilles handles this terribly. One of his students is telling him that countless people are dead and it's possibly because of the actions of the both of them, and he seems apathetic to it. Hope even dismisses him entirely and tells him it's not possible, as if he wasn't seeking out an ancient powerful artifact to begin with, and it wouldn't be the first time that they've heard of the Pieces of Eden as well. In any case, after the altercation is over, Shay is cooled down and all he's left with is utter dissent with the Brotherhood and a frightening calmness. Shay has reached his final straw, and he now means to prevent the deaths of further innocents by way of relieving the creed of the manuscript. A noble goal, and one, might I add, still puts him within the fold of the Assassin's Creed, despite his actual actions, at least philosophically. What happens next really pisses me off. In case you didn't know, Achilles already knew that Shay meant to betray the creed. He can be seen right before Shay enters the homestead, standing in the window, so he's watching him walk up to the homestead. He then leaves as he approaches. In addition, if you pay attention, you can actually hear rustling in the bushes and whistling as well. This is Hope and her men surrounding the homestead as well. What my problem is that despite all of the time that Achilles has to think about his actions and use reason, he decides to be rash and force an emotional altercation. And he frames it as he just happened to walk in when Shay was stealing the manuscript. What's worse is that he makes an enemy out of Shay and gives him no choice but to run away, rather than sitting him down and discussing their differences of opinion.
I had such hopes for you, Shay. Achilles, I have to do this.
And what is it you're doing exactly? Stealing from your brothers? Betraying me?
Someone must make amends.
Make amends? You have no idea what you're doing. The future of the whole continent, maybe the whole world, is tied up in that manuscript.
Perhaps. But we don't have the right to decide that future.
The right! We have the responsibility!
We are responsible for killing innocents and destroying cities. This mad grab for power. It ends now.
I will not let you destroy everything we have built! assassins! Stop him! Stop Shay!
This right here is absolute evidence that Achilles is a horrific leader and the biggest reason that the Colonial Brotherhood fell apart in its entirety. Just as Connor puts it.
Let me tell you something, Connor. Life is not a fairy tale, and there are no happy endings.
No. Not when men like you are left in charge.
Now Shay is pushed into a corner at the edge of a cliff and is left with the decision to either stop and surrender the manuscript to what he thought were his people and risk even more lives being lost, or offer his own life in exchange for the greater good. Burdened with immeasurable guilt and the disease of nobility, Shay's decision is no surprise.
That's enough!
Give back the manuscript, Shay. I'm sure Achilles...
I cannot! I will not let this happen again. All those souls lost. One more hardly matters.
Shay!
In the next few hours of the game, we spend on the other side of things and become more friendly with the colonial right of the Templar Order led by Grand Master Haytham Kenway. However, Shay's mind is ever steadfast on his main goal of stopping another event like Lisbon at any cost. His actions and his goals are quite noble, and that has not changed, except the assassins are becoming more fickle, with Hope and her men engaging in gang activity and the use of poison on innocent people and the general public. Stopped in their tracks by Shay, of course, only to find out that it was merely a distraction to give time for Liam and Achilles to reach the next precursor site in the north. Shay and Haytham rush to the next location and find Achilles and Liam there. And what a wonderful opportunity it is for Achilles to show his incompetence once again. So, just before Shay calls out to them, Achilles has a small moment of reflection where he's presented with the knowledge that Shay was right. He does not, however, show even a morsel of remorse that he was the one that got millions of people killed in Lisbon. Instead, Shay calls out to him with frustration, and you want to know what he does?
Is this the apple?
No, don't touch anything. Shay was right.
What would he know?
More than me, apparently.
Finally, you understand. Achilles. This is a structure to hold the world together, not a weapon to control it. This whole calamity could have been avoided if you'd only listened to me.
Disrespectful to the end.
Yes, we've been working on that.
Right or wrong, Shay? You betrayed the Brotherhood, Achilles, and me.
Says the man who shot me in the back.
At the homestead. That was Chevalier. I don't miss.
Liam, don't!
He tells Shay that he's being disrespectful. Achilles, what are you talking about? You just admitted that Shay was right and that you casted him out for that, despite the fact that you're the reason millions of people are dead and a city is destroyed, and he's concerned with Shay's tone. Can you tell I actually don't like this guy? Anyways, and the next few lines of dialogue are also extremely interesting because Liam comments, right or wrong, you still betray the creed. And I can't believe it, because if you really listen to what Liam is saying, even though it's a throwaway line, he basically claims that loyalty to the creed is more important than countless lives, and that Shay should have done nothing instead of fighting for what was right. Calling back to a little while ago, I spoke about how Liam's moral compass functions entirely with the Brotherhood at its center, and not the idea of the greater good. It seems to me that perhaps he's not actually a good person, rather an untested person, and he just happens to be around people who claim to be good. This is further evidenced by the fact that soon after, Liam actually pulls a gun on Shay. Even faced with the information that Shay was right all along, he's still willing to stay on that path. Granted, I imagine he's also grappling with the death of Hope and the others at Shay's hands, but he can't begin to see past himself, and neither can Achilles. They cannot see beyond and realize that Shay had to turn from the creed out of necessity. This was such a stark contrast to the leadership of Haytham Kenway, even with what little we got of it in Rogue. For instance, look here.
Why not?
Achilles is harmless now. A mentor with no followers. What kind of world are we making if we cannot show mercy? Besides, he understands what these precursor sites are now. Without him, the assassins may continue their search.
Valid points. Never forget what has happened here.
I won't. But the world will.
Haytham is willing to stay his blade even though he's at the throat of Achilles, and he's willing to hear Shay out. A quick callback to Achilles and how he wasn't able to see past himself when Shay tried to steal the manuscript at the homestead, even though he had time to think about everything and he was under no immediate danger as well. And what's more, Haytham actually listens to Shay and agrees with his decision. And while we aren't shown much of the future, I do think that Haytham is a large reason why Shay decided to stay with the Knights Templar well after achieving his goals in Rogue. Following the events in the north, Shay is tasked with a 20-year-long mission of locating the box used to find the pieces of Eden, and his search leads him to the Palace of Versailles, where he cuts down an assassin and begins the story of a young Arno Dorian. Even at the end of the game, I do still believe that Shay never betrayed the ideals of the assassins, and that despite being cast out, he was still acting within the fold of the Creed, in a philosophical and moral sense. However, it is possible he lost himself along the way, as he does seem to be clinging to Templar ideals a lot more in the future, especially with what can be seen in his ending speech. Now, Assassin's Creed Rogue is a beautiful and lovely story, with some very compelling characters. I do wish the game had gotten a bit more recognition, but this is likely in part due to Ubisoft's poor marketing and releasing the game alongside Assassin's Creed Unity as well. There are also a few things I myself thought would have enriched the story a lot more and allowed for some more depth with the characters in some instances. For starters, the single biggest thing that could have been changed was how black and white the Assassins and the Templars were written. The factions should have been a lot more nebulous and made it seem like both sides had their right and wrongs. It should have been like looking through history through a different lens, which I think was perhaps the beginning idea, but evidently wasn't executed well, as Shay's basically pure good, and the other characters seem to have nothing but faults. Another thing I think would have been a great change was having Liam be a lot more empathetic towards Shay. I mean, they're practically brothers, and at no point after Shay's exile do I see Liam siding with Shay and standing up for him. I would go as far as to say that it should have been Liam to be the one to restrain Achilles at the northern precursor site. I mean, think about it. Achilles has had his entire brotherhood cut down and he's lost himself. He's lost his family as well. And Liam should be the one to be hesitant about killing the only family that he has left, regardless of his feelings towards Shay for his betrayal. I mean, would it not have been incredible to have like a final boss battle against Liam where they both don't want to hurt each other, but they have to, where they battle among the falling icicles and the icebergs with some dramatic music swelling in the background as well? I don't know, I think that would have been really cool. Even having it as a set piece with Haytham and Achilles dueling in the backdrop, which could be what drives Shay to deliver the final blow. One other thing I think could have enriched the game even further was to have framed Achilles as more of a broken, grieving man. Maybe even a few more lines about his son Connor, because for most of the game he's more so just an arrogant mentor who thinks he knows everything and doesn't question himself. It could have given a lot of his decisions more depth and shifted his character from callous to humane, something closer to his portrayal in Assassin's Creed 3, where he holds a lot more restraint. But that's also directly due to the events of Rogue itself. Rogue reminds us that the Creed is only as strong as the people who uphold it. And in this story, the American Colonial Brotherhood, even with all of their potential, fail the Creed more than Shay ever does. The ideals of peace, wisdom, and freedom collapse under Achilles' stubbornness and the other assassins' blind loyalty. And it shows how quickly a noble philosophy can rot when its followers refuse to reflect upon themselves. Shay's proclivity for independence and insubordination allows him to be the only one to weigh the cost of his actions, even when that reflection tears him away from the only family he's ever known. In choosing justice over allegiance, Shay exposes a painful truth at the heart of the Assassin's Creed, that righteousness is not guaranteed by a symbol or a title, and that morality depends on choices, not allegiances.
You broke the assassins. Betrayed everyone you knew. He sided with our worst enemies. And for what?
To save the world.
I hope that world is a good one.
Alright, thank you so much for watching through the end. I think I've talked about Shay enough. If you couldn't tell, Shay is obviously one of my favourite characters in the entire Assassin's Creed franchise, and I loved making this video and researching him. This has been my first ever YouTube video, so if you liked it too, you're more than welcome to stick around if you want to see some more in the future. But that is all that I have for now, so I'll see you around.
I am Shay Patrick Cormac, Templar of the Colonial, of the American Right. I am an older man now, and perhaps wiser. A war and a revolution have ended, and another is about to begin. May the Father of Understanding guide us all.